Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps, and I am joined in Grandma's Couch Studio by illustrious and decorated individuals.
Are you sure?
I'm not, honestly.
I wouldn't be sure either.
Well, I just at least questionably, I would say, I would say something nice to, the public about you guys, but.
Yeah. I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah.
Well, who the heck
Fair.
are you guys?
The maddest mad scientist, bumperette installer.
Bumperette installer.
Yes.
I wonder how many people know what a bumperette is right now, the listening. You know what I mean?
The
like-
ones that know.
They know.
No.
They know. They know. I've ruined a couple bumperettes in my life.
And I'm Jeff Shermani.
The Italian Stallion, the producer, who's just playing with knobs over there.
Yes. All the knob playing.
Getting us going. All the knob playing.
Wow. That's how we're going to start the
He's
morning.
knobbing. He's
so
knobbing.
Good morning to Joe O'Brien. Good morning to Chip Fury. And good morning to Giaga Jeepers.
Good morning, everyone. And what you will notice, and so folks who are tuning in on our live, and if this is, one of your first times listening to us in your ear holes, first of all, welcome to the show. I will choose my acronyms wisely. I was, S show, but whatever. If you're listening in your ear hole, we are in the studio, and you would see that you can actually join us live on the Book of Faces and now on YouTube. Are we live on YouTube?
We
Jeffrey?
are live on YouTube.
We're live on
In fact,
YouTube?
that's actually where Chip was saying hi from.
Hey, good morning, Chip. And what you would see behind us is this
Obscured.
clouded in mystery.
Yes.
May or may not be a sign under this sheet
Probably not.
behind us.
I think Davey just hung the sheet. I don't think there's a
Yeah.
sign
could
there.
be hung just a sheet on the wall.
I suppose if they were really good and looking really close, they might see the power cable to it hidden as well.
Power cable to the tape. That's
don't-
all.
to
It
the
was
tape.
just a tape box.
I don't think they're gonna see that.
So, and just to let you in, if you do or don't remember, and again, if it's your first time joining us, thank you for joining us. And what has happened was we actually did a 6-week hiatus, a big plowback into the studio where we formalized our actual, the production value of our space itself. And that way we can continue some work and operations out on our service floor while also bringing you the best possible audio and visual experience that we can provide. And you'll notice some of this will be on our Life in Low Range YouTube series and, other opportunities to use this studio. But in that process, we had this big blank wall, and we really needed your help in the process of kind of finalizing the vision for it. And under 24 hours, you, our listeners, our Patreons, and all of our fellow supporters just blew us away and fulfilled our fundraising goal for this blank wall. And what was previously there was this big, ugly, beauties in the eye of the beholder tape sign that Davey had put together. Mm-hmm. So we have now a sheet on the wall, and you'll have to keep watching for the coming weeks and see what may or may not be under the sheet.
And if you want to remember the way the tape looked, there may be a shirt.
Well, I was
that
going to say,
you can
Dave is literally working on those right now. So if you did support the sign, he's working on your shirts right now to get those out. And if you still want to get one of those shirts, we're selling them for $50.
And we're selling them not because we think the shirt is actually worth $50, because let's face it, it's not. But those proceeds go directly towards supporting the podcast itself. Because as I mentioned, I was actually at an event over the weekend, and I was talking to a couple other automotive professionals, and they were like, when do you possibly have time to do these things that I was telling them that we do? And I was like,
we don't.
We don't have any more time than you have. And there's always, a cost-benefit analysis or a balancing act that has to be done. And so the podcast itself is really for our listeners, our followers, and our Jeep family and automotive family alike. And so that's where the t-shirt at $50 a pop shows that you are a valued supporter of this program. Likewise, if you pledged a 50 or more on the GoFundMe campaign, you too will be receiving one of those t-shirts as well. If we haven't reached out to you, we will be. if, again, you pledged or donated $50 or more in the process. Anywho, we've got a great program today. We are going to be talking about race Jeeps.
Race Jeeps.
Race Jeeps. And so we'll be getting into that a little bit later in the program. Do we have a special activity at the end? Jeffrey?
You know what?
Jeffrey?
I don't know that we do.
Fail.
Oh, Jeffrey.
He was too distracted by his knobs.
I was too distracted by wiring the studio this past week, so that we actually had all the outlets working.
That is fair.
Instead of running extension cords like we had been doing.
We did have Jeff the builder on site on Saturday.
Well, we fired the electrician, and we hired another electrician named Greg for the end of the project.
We may have fired the Jeff electrician.
Oh, dear.
And, hired on a much more qualified electrician.
I could only imagine.
We had mystery magic and wires.
There was something bizarre going on, and we didn't even get a chance to tell you about this, Neil. But for some reason, the south wall outlets are all on the same line,
Right.
and the first outlet worked perfectly. We used an outlet tester;
Congratulations.
everything
Good.
was great.
As
you follow the line back, the next set of outlets didn't work. So we checked that one and the one after it. Neither of them worked, but they were showing that there was a ground and a positive had been switched.
Okay.
Or reversed.
Flippy flop.
So we're trying to figure this out.
So
We take all the outlets out. I took the wires back out. I mean, we broke it down. There was nothing wired incorrectly. Greg came over and was assessing it. Said the same thing.
then
Everything's wired correct.
He put his hand on the wire and went, and it worked beautifully.
It did. It did.
Nothing
and then
changed.
Greg goes, so what did you find that you made a mistake on and change on me? I'm like, Greg, I'm telling you, I wish I did find something wrong.
What did you find that you made a mistake on?
The wire was like, oh, crap.
Greg is involved.
The Greg is here,
The
and
Greg.
he means business.
Oh.
And it just suddenly it all worked. So we wired it back up. We ran a couple extra tests and everything was good. I'm like, I don't know.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it be that way. That is awesome.
Yeah, it was entertaining. So that was the big focus. And I totally did not plan an activity for today.
Well, I thought we had an activity or a product review, but you know what? We'll worry about that next week. Last week we did have Rob Morgan of Daddy Jeep Garage join us. Kind of streamed in with us and told us about the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival that is coming up in a few short weeks. So if you're not registered for that and you're in Western PA, Southern New York, Northern West Virginia, Eastern Ohio to Western Ohio, definitely a cool opportunity to get out there and wheel and share in the Jeep life. As like I said, we're going to be talking about race Jeeps, which is kind of near and dear to our heart, and we have a good friend, a listener or follower who was in the race scene for a while, and we'll be talking a little bit about the history of that. We're looking to actually maybe push this into 2 series, this week and next week, and we'll be kind of breaking down, what that looked like in history, and without getting lost in too much minutia, which Scott and I can definitely get pretty pedantic on engines and transmission configurations, so on and so forth.
Yep.
But I guess, without further ado, any good weekend updates from you guys?
So if you're on our Discord, you got the sneak peek of what I'm going to be talking about. For some reason,
Who's on our Discord, by the way?
our
Patreons. Yeah, our Patreons. And thank you for our Patreons
Felt like I was on a trick question there.
It was not a trick question. You were like the kid who didn't raise their hand in elementary school and got called on anyways.
I had the deer in the headlight.
You did. You panicked for a second.
He did. I was very concerned because he's usually so good about
He's usually
promoting
so good
the
about
Patreons.
thanking those folks for their support. Yeah.
Just
You too can support us, just FYI on Patreon.
Yep.
And you can see, sneak peeks into the Mad Scientist workshop.
So anyway, for some reason, the tools I find me are all something that you would normally go to a museum and look at in static display.
Good for you. Good for you.
And with that said, I have to have a qualifier. It's actually the date they asked for the patent. It's patents applied for date. So I don't know exactly when the tool was made.
Okay.
But it's fun regardless.
Right.
So
Well, because back then, didn't you have to apply for the patent yearly?
yes, and
See, I
and they
think
were always pushing to have their product out first.
And if you made one little change, like now manufacturers will make a change mid-production, and they won't patent it, right? We have different patent laws, and I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but it was my understanding that back in the day, you used to have a patent basically yearly, or when you did make that recipe change, you would repatent it.
Or maybe it was like 5 years, but in any regard, it doesn't matter. So anyway, the data plate literally says September 12th, it actually says just 93, because, when you're in that situation, you don't think about the fact that the first two digits are going to change.
Shut up.
But it's actually 1893.
What?
So it is, and it just says applied. So it doesn't say, hey, we have the patent, here's a patent number. So I think it's pretty early on. And something I didn't know, because you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Mm-hmm. Most early machines for sheet metal were actually made of wood with limited amount of metal, because in the 1890s, metal production was actually pretty new. So biggest share of this is actually hardwood, which is super cool.
You're telling me you have a nearly 150-year-old machine.
130.
150 sounded better, but 130. I mean, I guess at that point in time, it really doesn't matter because you're 100 plus at this point.
100%.
A century-old machine.
Correct.
And it's mainly made of hardwood.
Yes, to bend sheet metal.
And
That's awesome.
This company, their two primary things they made machines for were a gutter bender, which is a long machine, and the brake I have from 5 foot to 8 or 10 feet, all throughout that.
And how long is this one?
This is a 5 foot, which
no, I meant inches.
oh. So
60, just so we know. I want to move on.
I just wanted to know.
Scott would have been here for the next half an hour
That's
trying
fine.
to figure
Well,
out.
because he had a 36-inch brake that was 4 foot,
would have
so I
to-
wanted to verify.
I know. And if Amy's not watching, Amy is his human calculator that he
100%.
married in part so she could do math for him.
yeah, I would have took my shoes off. But anyway,
He would have had to count on his toes. And
so we were able. It was actually made in Buffalo, New York, back in the 1890s, and I was able to go up there, literally just east of Buffalo, and load it up. Involved lots of cranking of trailers with jacks and loading precariously with a big, huge A-frame. And then we get back to my house, and of course, you think you have like 80 hours in the day, and
Absolutely.
it's going to be daylight the whole time, and there's going to be no raining.
welcome to SFJ 4x4.
So next thing you know, you're hammered down. And
What did you drive? Did you drive the Gladiator?
I drove my Gladiator.
Okay.
Did-
Jeep Adventure.
did
Jeep
awesome.
Adventure. Yeah, of course it did.
But anyway, we're on 90, and I'm like, why is it taking so long to get through Erie? From one side of Erie to the other. I'm like, when you're going, not paying attention, it seems like you blink and you're at
Right.
the New York line. It seemed like it took forever to get from the New York line to the Ohio line. But anyway, it's trying to rain. I'm like pleading with the clouds, like, come on, don't rain on my mostly wood 100-year-old bending
That's what I'm
tool.
thinking, right?
Like a panic is setting in.
Right.
But finally we get home and we're like, okay, we got to unload this thing. And the weather had pretty much stopped and behaved at that point. So I go out and I turn the trailer around in the field. Amy starts up the 36 because I inappropriately left it in front of the door that we have to unload this thing.
Perfect.
Because I had
You were-
80 hours.
Right, because you had 80 hours.
I
You're
mean,
just
we were
gonna
going to
take
go to a
care of it
car
later.
show.
Oh, you were going to come to the car show.
I thought I
even.
was. But,
Wow.
But we're very ambitious.
Very ambitious.
So she starts the car up, does a beautiful job, backs it in the turnaround. I back the trailer in. We send kids in to go get showers and change clothes and do all the appropriate things so they can go to school today.
Right.
And then we get the engine crane out and we pick up the tool. We bring it back, and that's when we realize, what do we have on an engine crane? We have two front legs. what's wider than the legs? The brake.
The brake is, yep.
So we get out various blocks of wood and
Now we're trying to crib it
and
up.
we're cribbing it, and we tilt it down, and it's on Harbor Freight furniture dollies that are screwed into the wood to make it better. And one's not even square, because of course
You didn't do this. That's how you bought it.
that's how I
you
bought
mean.
it.
Right.
So then I go and I
Can we talk about the fact that you have a USA-made 130-year-old
on
hardwood
Freight.
brake that was probably sourced from the hardwoods of Western New York or
100%.
northern Pennsylvania on Harbor Freight furniture dollies?
Yes.
The irony is not lost on me or our listeners. I guarantee that.
So we're looking at it. My wife makes a smart call, and she says, we need to get the back of the trailer down. So I go over and I crank up the jack on the trailer on 2 blocks of wood till I almost take the tires of the Gladiator off the ground,
Oh boy. Oh boy.
which gets the trailer down, makes the angle less. We're able to use a floor jack to slowly get it down onto the ground halfway, and then we precariously, at that point, the engine crane was no longer used. We used blocks of woods and jacks, and slowly jack stands may have been involved. But we got it down to the floor, rolled it into its spot, and immediately I looked for a piece of steel. So
Of course.
Gotta
now
bend
you
it. Gotta bend
gotta play
something.
with it, right?
And again, if you're on the Discord, you got to see that. It literally bent over 90. Beautiful, nice, effortless. It's just everything I wanted it to be. And for those that don't know, 5-foot brakes in today's world, you pretty much have 4. I think you might be able to get a 6, but you pretty much jump to 8 at this point.
Right.
And yes, your bed is 5 foot. The machine overall is like 82 inches wide
Sure.
because there's extra material and weights and all that kind of other stuff. So an 8-foot brake, that's a commitment. That's a whole wall.
Right.
Don't have room for that. Barely have room for 5 foot.
Yeah.
So I was pretty excited that gets me as much bending opportunity for as little of a package as I could get. Plus, it's old and cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's right up your alley.
And my mill, which is ironically beside it, is literally 1 year older than the brake.
You, sir, are a connoisseur of old crappy machines.
Which
He's
is
got a Metalworks museum.
which
He
is
does.
next to my 1932 lathe,
Perfect.
late model.
Late model. Youngster on the block.
Yes.
Ooh, the technology is just dripping off that one.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. Jeffrey, and how was your weekend?
It was pretty good.
Any
It was
Jeep adventures? Any just family adventures? What do you got?
family adventures. It was Morgan's birthday, our middle son. So we went down to the Conneaut Beach and let them play on the playground. Had some cake. Saw you, waved as
Totes.
you honked and drove by,
Totes.
and then randomly found your wife sitting on a bench.
I left her there.
at the beach.
I left her there. She's fine. She's a big girl. She's
She's probably happiest. at the
probably
beach.
happiest. Yeah.
But it was actually really funny because I was trying to round up my kids. I'm literally, Lily wanted to go on the seesaw, and I was like, here, a couple times and we'll go. And as I didn't want to climb on it. I'm just pushing the seesaw, let's be honest.
Fail, Jeff.
And all of a sudden I hear, hi, Jeff. And I turn around and your wife is just sitting right there on the bench.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I didn't realize you were here. And she's like, oh, yeah, Neil was here too. He'll be back soon. I was like, oh, I already honked. He honked. I waved. Everything's good. I was like, what are the chances that
What
we
are the
just happen
chances?
to crash into each other
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Good party
Um,
day.
But it was perfect weather for that. So we enjoyed
Yes.
that. And then other than that, I mean, just a lot of work for the nonprofit event coming up next Saturday.
It's this Saturday.
This Saturday.
This Saturday.
So nonstop work on that. Building some shelves into the cargo trailer that we acquired last week also. So
It's been a busy month for you.
yeah, it's been crazy busy
Sure.
and a lot going on, but the event's finally coming up and we're excited for that. 15 different artists lined up to compete for cash.
And that's in Erie, Pennsylvania.
At room 33.
Very cool. Yeah.
And it's
so if
open to the
you're-
public, free to attend.
Yep.
It's-
If you're a music connoisseur, if you just want a fun night out, you can head over to Erie, Pennsylvania, room 33, and enjoy. This is all covers.
It's all cover
This is
music,
a cover-
so it's all
a
songs
cover.
that you'll probably know. And it's, like I said, 15 different artists competing for cash. And it's inside of a speakeasy. So room 33 is a speakeasy.
Yep.
It's really fun because it looks like a little book cafe when you first walk in. and you got to walk through a bookcase, and when you walk in, it's all mafia inspired. It's very cool.
That late turn of the century kind of, like you said, speakeasy
So I have to
atmosphere.
ask: are you going to wear appropriate attire?
Of course I am.
That's awesome.
Of course I am.
That would be a really cool night. I mean, and honestly, let's talk about the indie music scene for one hot second. I am just not. I'm about as mainstream as they come when it comes to like music stuff. So I'm not really the person who appreciates independent originals. Right. I know that there's a number of people out there, some of you listening may be that person who's like, oh, yeah, I love when an artist brings their originality to it. Nope. I love covers. I love like the mainstream top 40. You want to remake that in your own way. I'm here for it. So very cool. I think I'm going to be out of town. If not, I would totally go to this event. And hopefully we'll see some of you guys there. It's a great cause and should be a fun night out. And as a friendly reminder, kind of anything we do is a Jeep adventure because we all drive Jeeps. I got the question over the weekend from another automotive professional, and we had started to talk a little bit about our, about our careers and whatnot. And he was like, "So do you drive a Jeep?" And like looked at like in the general direction. We were at a wedding of a customer of ours. Congratulations to Jonathan and E on their wedding, the beautiful ceremony they had, and they're off on their honeymoon now, I understand. But congratulations to the Greggs and the Greggs Christmas Tree Farm family on that. So I'm at their wedding, and a guy, another automotive professional, he goes, "Oh, do you drive a Jeep?" And like looked at the general direction of my wife and I, and we're like, Which one are you asking? You're like, yes, we both drive Jeeps. Like, what are you not understanding here?
Yes.
And it was just interesting because I don't think he understood the gravity, the obsession, the depth of what SFJ 4x4 is.
You didn't understand that you then need dose Jeeps.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
We need dose Jeeps.
Yes.
Maybe we need trace Jeeps.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes we need a Project 2 in the back of our brain. And
parts that sort of look like a Jeep
100%.
that you can claim as a Jeep. And that's
sometimes you can claim as a Jeep. If you have a title with it, sometimes you can claim it as a Jeep.
But are you a real Jeep owner until you have Jeep parts that resemble a Jeep in the back of Scott's Field?
I don't want to talk with Jeffrey. I feel like that was a little forced in an attempt
that just
to.
means Jeff's not a real Jeep.
That was
owner.
right. Say, you're not.
I'm gonna go for it.
Because we are. We're diehards.
I know.
You
both
funny?
have Jeep parts in the back of Scott's Field.
I talked to Rick Payway some time ago, and he said something about the fact of that he has Jeeps from coast to coast, and they're just waiting for him to pick them up and drag them home. And he's either purchased or committed to, or just randomly left in certain places.
He's probably forgotten about some.
I think he probably has forgotten about more Jeeps that he owns than than most people, most of our listeners,
most people will ever own
that will ever own.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I absolutely had forgotten about one that I have at your house as well. And I thought I should really get rid of that. If I don't remember that I have it, I should probably not have it. But anyway, so we had a beautiful wedding. We went on an adventure through Ohio and Pennsylvania for said affair, and yesterday we had a nice just a nice day in the local area, and it was just a good weekend all around. Good weekend all around. Lots and lots of things to do in the community.
I gotta ask because you had this great social media post, and it absolutely looked like there was bounce houses at the wedding.
Yeah.
You clarified in your post that it was not, that you
Yes.
found this place on your way home.
Yes.
But you definitely did the bounce house in wedding attire. Now, it was an obstacle course.
Yes.
The question is, was it multiple that you had to run through as you completed them, or was it one long course?
Yeah. So what Jeffrey is, I'll just give for our listeners, if you're not on my socials, so we left the wedding. It was about an hour and a half of the reception. The reception was about an hour and a half from our home, right? And and it was kind of this interesting little space where we weren't quite near an interstate. We would have had to have gone, backtracked east to find an interstate, or significantly west. And so instead, much as we will do, we took kind of the path less traveled.
Well,
And
you're driving a Jeep, so of course you do.
100%.
Right.
I wanted to see all the small towns and all the little things, right? And as
Was the Jeep topless?
it was not.
It was such beautiful weather.
It was
too.
beautiful weather. We actually talked about that at the wedding because we had a Jeep parking area at the wedding. Got ducked. The groom's father, ducked my Jeep because they are Christmas tree farmers. Gave me this awesome little green duck with Christmas
I
lights.
may
on
have
it.
known about that.
Yeah, ducked the Jeep at the wedding, and thought that was kind of fun. It was a nice token of appreciation, and so we left. I wanted to leave at a reasonable enough time, because we left a little after 9, so that by the time we'd be getting home to kids and whatnot, and if we need to take a potty break, it'd be close to 11. Right, that was my plan.
And then bounce houses. Happen.
Well, so I kid you not, this was the most wildly interesting situation because we're traveling on these back road 2 lanes that were, they're not by no means, they're not, they are paved. They're not dirt roads, you know what I mean? But they were good enough, but they're not huge.
Bougie back roads.
They're bougie back roads, right?
Yeah.
They're bougie back roads. And we're probably on a straightaway, and I could probably see 2 miles ahead of me, and the world is kind of aglow ahead of me, and you can kind of see a large church steeple, and it was kind of interesting. And I promise you, it was like driving through kind of desolate, dark. Of course, it's 9 o'clock. It's it's probably pushing 9:45, 10 o'clock at night, and we're on just there's nothing around us except for farmhouses and little blinking lights, and we come up to this carnival. It was almost like an oasis out of a Hollywood movie. I kid you not. It was like this odd oasis of blinky lights and beautiful bright lighting and this spectacular town center. Something, honestly, out of an M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong video or movie, where it's just it was really interesting.
Scott thinks that's the real name of that.
That's not his name. It's not his name. That producer's name is not M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong. Anyways, it was just I came up on this and I was like okay, and the GPS had me just turning right and buzzing past it. Now, if you've followed the program for any period of time, you'll know that my wife is a very special creature. She does not watch the program, so I'm pretty at liberty to talk about it until she does, right? And then she kind of blips in and she offers some quips that just cut me to the core sometimes. But so as we turn northbound onto a main state route of sorts, despite the fact it's only 2-lane, and she sees these bounce houses.
And she goes, Neil.
She goes, bounce houses. I was she's like, I'm going to beat you in a race on the bounce houses. And at this point in time, it's 10:15 at night.
I need
right?
to clarify, too. These two are the biggest competition people between each other. Forever.
Forever.
It doesn't
the challenge
matter.
has been issued.
It
If
doesn't
it's
matter.
Frisbee, barefoot race,
Yes.
bounce house, and nice attire, doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
They're there for
a
it.
challenge has been issued between my wife and I. And so she sees these and she was like, what was that? She's half awake, right? She had danced the night away.
Oh.
We had full bellies from this beautiful, this
Yes.
beautiful wedding.
And Jen will fall asleep
Instantly in the vehicle, right?
So she's startled awake by the brightness of the bounce house.
And not to mention, she's in an absolutely gorgeous, formal wedding, attendee dress. And she sees the bounce houses and she's like,
Game on.
I would beat you. And she's like, I challenge you to a race. And I was like, Jen, I'm not here for this right now. I'm just trying to get home to the kids and, get, blah, blah, blah.
He always does this. I don't
And
know why.
she's basically like, well, it's because I'd beat you. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm not one to turn down a challenge because honestly, let's face it, I'm a child. But I was like, you know what, Jen? And she was like, I can't believe you're driving away from it. And I was like,
So then at the bounce house.
so I was like, that's it. I'm going back. She's like, really? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm done with this. I'm not taking this. And I'm going back. I'm not going to be the person who didn't let this happen. So we turn around, flip the Jeep around somebody's yard, who knows what, God, hopefully it's okay. And we go back to the bounce house. We find the parking. Because now this stuff has gotten real, right? The issue, the triple dog dare has been issued, and I'm not one to shy away from a challenge. And I was like, what are we gonna do? Like, I'm in this, this oasis of this beautiful little town side carnival, and we walk up to these bounce houses, and my wife, in her charming nature, finds the first worker of the bounce houses, and she was like, do we have to pay to get on the bounce houses? Now, I'm a grown man. Now, most people have gone on to, our website, social page, whatever. I am a grown, corn-fed Midwestern man, right? I'm just
Loose Midwestern.
whatever, Jeffrey.
What should have been asked is, can we break your bounce house?
Right.
Can we inappropriately abuse the heck out
Can
of
we
your bounce house?
inappropriately abuse the heck of your bounce houses? This this worker, and she was kind. She took a look at us. I am in a tie and slacks and a vest, and my wife is in a wedding attire, formal wedding attire. And this woman goes, absolutely. She goes, you know what? Don't even worry about paying. Like, you want on?
I'm gonna film this for my
And she
TikTok.
was like, you
This
want
was
on?
a TikTok video.
And my wife goes, oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much. She goes, we have to race. We need to race on the obstacle course. And I was like, are you kidding me? So there's like kids, because that's who should be on the bounce house.
Right.
There's kids. And the workers are like, hanging out for the night. And this worker that my wife had corralled, now with jubilation, is now telling the other workers that this couple,
This is about to go down.
this is about to go down, right?
Yeah,
And you
so
can
now
see the
you've got
word
the crowd.
spread, and the workers all kind of come over, and they kick the kids off. I promise you, there was kids on there. It was like like just this poor father and his daughter just wanted to bounce, and they were like, nope, it's closed. You got to get off, And
The main event is here.
the main event is here, and it's a carny sideshow. So like we've got a melting pot of individuals working the bounce houses, right? And there was multiple languages and things being said and so on and so forth. And they were like, we've got the timer. Like one guy pulled out his phone for timing. One person laid the
man.
ground rules. And the obstacle course is one long obstacle course, and you enter through this tight little cavity, which obviously, again, is made for, I don't know,
child.
a
A 6-year-old.
child between the weights of 50 and 80 pounds to go through. And then there's a series of uprights that are meant to, kind of beat you around. And then you have like horizontal blow-ups that you have to fit through as if you're being compressed by rolling pins before you go up and over like a wall climb of sorts and tumble to your demise and out another little tiny orifice out the other side, basically.
Sounds awesome.
Right?
It
And
sounds
was,
like you guys shut down the carnival so that everybody could watch.
So stuff got real, because at that point, my wife was like taking out her earrings, and she's
throwing down.
she's got her earrings out. She's taking off her fancy shoes. And I was just like, we're doing this. Like, again, not one to shy from a challenge.
So was the carnival announcer announcing the race? Because I feel like at this point you need that.
You know what? I don't know, because I was in game mode. I was focused. I was a 19-year-old before a football game, and I just, I was just seeing red at that point.
So is this where we hear that Jen won?
At that point in time, I tucked my tie into my shirt. I took my
think
vest
the answer
off.
is yes, 'cause he hasn't said anything.
I kicked my shoes off, and the carnival workers in their best broken English counted down for us, and we dove into the obstacle course, careening and just flailing our bodies to the absolute just awful, god-awful tumbling nature. And one of us did absolutely touch the ground first. I promise you there was a winner, clearly defined, but you had to be there. And to my knowledge,
Which means Gen 1.
Jen won
there is video
on TikTok.
on TikTok.
Oh, absolutely.
But
there.
I don't
It's
know who has
probably
it.
on like 20 different TikToks
I don't know
at this
who
point.
has it. I don't know who has it. And at that point in time, this little carnival was trying to shut down ish, right? Because now we're pushing 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And Jen and I were like that couple as we just kind of like we just kind of walked the remaining little vendor area, and people like kept coming up to us and like, that was so fun. That's so cool, And we were just like,
So how
Just
how many,
another day in the Simpson household, as far as we're concerned.
how many vendors did she get to see while you were still trying to get out of the obstacle?
He's stuck in the little roller thing.
That's all I can picture.
I'm just telling you, it will go down as the legend. I finally went back and I Googled I had to know, because honestly, like Jen and I left and we're like, we don't even know where we're at. Like,
Yeah.
I promise you, this was like an oasis of a little town center, randomly in
It's the start of a horror movie is what that
is. It is the start of a horror suspense drama movie.
It absolutely is.
It was awesome. You know, like, who does that? We do. That's just the reality of it. That's where our Jeep life takes us, you know?
Let's go to the comments real quick. So since we last read comments, Daddy Jeep said, morning, guys. Joe Brilla said, hi, kids. And then he said, try SCE to Ox. I think he's referring to when I was turning all the knobs. Eric the Great says, you can determine what brand new Jeep will get death wobble before you buy it. I'm interested to know more.
Yeah. Kind of true, actually.
Yeah, but I'm interested what his take is. Bill McWilliams says, good morning. Amy Brown says, good morning, guys.
Morning.
Daddy Jeep said, Rick is like a squirrel with buried nuts, and that's referring to the conversation about his Jeeps all over the country. Fred Mert said, will Jeep still be producing vehicles in January 2026? I don't think so.
Yeah. Some of the news that's come out recently, it may not be.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then Keith Dart says, morning, guys, and Fred Modis said, good morning.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining us, right? And you too can join us and be part of this, but we do appreciate all of our listeners across the world, 35 countries and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of download. You found one of the leading off-road automotive and obviously Jeep-specific podcasts in the world, which is just a remarkable thing to say. So thank you for being part of that and making it so. Yeah, it was a great Jeep adventure, to say the very least.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jeep great adventures, where did it all come from? Right, so the race Jeeps, and oftentimes we get a number of people who leave comments, call in, send emails, and they want more horsepowers out of Hurspers out of their Jeep models. And I think that humans as a whole, since kind of the dawn of the automotive age, and arguably you probably go back when we had just horses and foot races, right? If you look at the Olympics, go back to the origination of the Olympics, racing has been a huge part of our human experience.
It's something fun that I remember reading is, when was the first car race? When the second car was built.
That's absolutely true, right? And you look at like the spirit of competition between my wife and I. You know what? And I got to tell you, spirit of competition. And I'm gonna deviate and go back to the storyline just a hair here for you folks. One of my wife and my favorite things to do at the wedding is the married or together length dance. Right? I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Yes.
basically the DJ says, come out on the floor, and if you've been married, less than 1 day, please leave the floor. If you've been married for 1 year or less, please leave the floor. And they do this
And then 5 years, 10 years.
5 years, 10 years, 15 years, so on and so forth, right? And kind of the humorous piece for for my wife and I is that in general, we are younger than a lot of the other people that we are married for similar amounts of time.
Yep.
And so for us, that's our own little piece of competition, right? And so we were pretty excited this time around. Now, I thought it was fascinating. Typically, we're pretty steadfast in our competitive nature, and there's not tons of people out there past us. Man, this wedding, we were like lightweights. Everybody there had to have been 20 couples who were like 35 plus married.
That's
I thought that was
awesome.
remarkable, right?
I was at one wedding where they had two couples still there when they got to the 50-year mark. And the
Unbelievable.
DJ called it and said, all right, how long have you guys been married?
Yes.
One was like 65 years and the other was like 62.
Yes.
It was like,
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
And that was a couple. We were there. They were 64, 65 years.
That's crazy.
At this wedding as well. Regardless, spirit of competition, I think, is just a human thing, right?
Yes.
And so ultimately, those of us who are involved in the off-road as an enthusiast, the off-road industry as an enthusiast, sometimes it's about pushing ourselves. Sometimes it's about pushing our rig. Oftentimes, there are people who want to do off-road racing as well. I think that is where the core of it, kind of that human spirit that says, I want to do something a little greater than this moment. Because obviously, off-roading can very much be, hey, I just want to have some beautiful scenic vistas and I want to bump along in an area or a geography that most people can't go. But arguably there is a moment in your build or in your process as an enthusiast where you go, you know what? I want to see if I can climb that rock. I want to see if I can go over that ledge face. Honestly, there was a ledge face that I couldn't get this last time out that I was at. We went wheeling together, and I think about that ledge face, and I'm like, I'm feeling some type of way. I need to take Chuck Norris out there because I want to climb that ledge face, right? And I think that's the nature of racing, And can I do a little bit better than I did before, both personally, but also within the class of other racers that I am within?
Yep.
And so cars were racing.
Yep.
So why not just Jeeps? You know what I mean? Why not Jeeps? And when did that happen? What were you going to say there?
Well, I was going to say that a smart racer says that you're not racing your competitor, you're racing yourself.
Always.
That's how you actually succeed. And what's more fun than to take something that shouldn't be fast or shouldn't be agile, and suddenly you make it so.
And make it so.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, as you mentioned, there were these great epic races, certainly in the 30s and 40s amongst the car community.
Yes, hill
right?
climbs and all kinds of stuff.
Well, I'm saying just in the car community, you had, Henry Ford and company and all those other characters.
That's what I mean. With cars, for the longest time, that was a measure of quickness, is how fast a Model T or
Yes.
something like that could climb a hill. And they continued that on, I think, actually to this day still. But I remember my dad telling me about, like, in the 50s, cars would get to the top of this hill.
Yes.
I think like Pikes Peak and that kind of
Yes.
stuff, to dazzle people, like, oh, I did it in so many seconds or some.
Absolutely.
So it's just always been a thing. And then, Jeep's inception is really in competition, obviously with wartime,
Yes.
but you're pushing that vehicle to its breaking point, past the comfort level, which is also a normal thing in racing.
Absolutely. And, I thought it was interesting. I just started seeing the coverage, and this is going to be near and dear to you as we kind of start this conversation on race Jeeps and race series, that Trog is starting to ramp up. That actually individuals who are participating in Trog, which is the first weekend in October.
Which are those that don't know, Trog stands for the Race of Gentlemen.
Yeah, which was started in 2012. Folks who are going to be heavily participating in that have already started to invade the East Coast.
Yep.
And got their Airbnbs and their houses, and specifically those vehicles, it's motorcycles and hot rods or cars of the 20s, the 30s, and some 40s. I understand.
So it has to be 1934 and older for cars.
Okay.
Most bikes you're going to see are going to be Indians, old style Harleys, flathead style Harleys. And there's literally cars being built purposely for this race.
And I actually watched a fun 1930 something Indian, which was a museum quality piece.
Yep.
An individual in California purchased it from an estate where it was basically in a guy's man cave. I believe he passed, and it was this beautiful, fully restored Indian motorcycle, and the guy bought it and kind of, he was going to do likewise. He was a motorcycle shop owner, kind of that vintage era, and had it for a little while, and then started realizing he felt different when he drove it. And then Trog really started to take root. And within a few years of owning this museum piece, he started making modifications to it so that he could race it. And he said the estate that he bought it from was kind of horrified, but I mean, it was his at that point. And he's like, I want the spirit of this motorcycle to be alive and not just held up in my garage, basically.
So the biggest problem with that kind of stuff is that everyone's gone to a museum and you see stuff on static display, and you can kind of try to wrap your head around it. But if you can't imagine what it sounds like, you can't imagine how it feels to ride it down the road, that kind of stuff, where these people are experiencing that firsthand.
Yes.
Day after day, and you're seeing more of a resurgence of people using their stuff instead of just looking at it, and that continues along with all types of racing. We're seeing vintage, road course racing. We're seeing sand drags kind of starting back up again, where again, you people need things to be safe. You obviously need safety equipment and that kind of stuff, but they're doing it in the spirit of the era of the thing they're racing.
And, and I think that this conversation is near and dear to my heart because as a product of, of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s is my interest in the off-road industry. We didn't exactly have the off-road parks that we currently have.
Yep.
We didn't have the modern technologies, the creature comforts that we currently have.
The dark days.
Yeah, and honestly, that was kind of the end of the era of race Jeeps, right? Because obviously America becomes obsessed with racing in the automotive community, by the 30s, the 40s, and 50s, right? We see it in, popular media and content. We see it in movies. We see it in radio ads. America loves racing. And we love our automobiles, and so that grows. Well, unfortunately, the off-road industry and 4x4s were always second fiddle to the car community.
A little behind.
A little behind, right? Our technological advancements, our fit and finish, how we were using them. For the most part, our 4x4 community was very utilitarian. People weren't thinking about that as a race vehicle necessarily. We were thinking about it as exploration. We were using these vehicles to go from coast to coast and to cross terrain that had never been crossed before, but we weren't trying to go fast.
Yeah.
And I think that realistically, while there was some of it in the 60s, the 70s was the boom era for folks who were taking Jeeps and Broncos and other ATVs of sorts. And they were going out to the desert. They were going out to the woods. They were going out to the sand drags and the hill climbs and really starting to push that vehicle and themselves as drivers. And so
I think pretty much the minute they thought, hey, we should make this really fast, is the minute they put a V8 in a CJ.
And that's why we see the V8 become a standard item in the 70s.
And I love that original photo. If those that know, like an early Renegade, it's a V8. These two guys got their like cue ball helmets on. It's got the wide steely wheels, old school tires, and all four tires are in the air.
All four tires in the
and
air
they're just
coming off
hanging onto the seat.
No roll bar.
No roll bar. Giving it the beans. And I'm like, that is the spirit of Jeep racing if I've ever seen one.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, and ultimately, folks were using at that point in time, you think about if that's the late 60s into the 70s, Jeep had only been in production for about 30 years. So there are some of our listeners right now that your Jeep is 30 or 40 years old. You're hogging on a YJ off-road. That's the equivalent, right? And so of that time frame, and so CJ2As and military surplus Jeeps, those were largely part of the heavily modified marketer community.
Well, not only that, when you have the the OE manufacturer do something like put a V8 in, it makes people double down, and they want to make their Dauntless go fast. They want to make their 134 go fast. So then you see 2 carb intakes, high compression heads for the 134. You saw, I mean, I can't even quantify how much speed parts were made for the Dauntless. There was headers and intakes and little tricks to make those little V6s scream, where they're actually beating V8s.
Yes.
Because everyone loves an underdog. Just goes without saying.
Absolutely. And power to weight ratio was a very valuable thing at that time frame.
Yep.
And honestly, the upper hand was to folks who could machine, folks who had an understanding of the race car market.
Yep.
And the stuff that they were able to do with multiple platforms from multiple different manufacturers. And that's what I think I love about that era, is the fact that you could find Buick engines in these vehicles. You could find a GM. You could find a Ford engine. You can find, it was pretty much, once a muscle car got into a wreck or some type of other vehicle application,
game on.
They ripped it out and they shoved it into this little light-bodied, Jeep. Now, a lot of the racing that we're talking about or going to talk about, from today and then into next week, is going to be what I will call East Coast racing. Now, it's not exactly exactly just the East Coast or east of the Mississippi, but in the Southwest, where there was a lot of racing already happening there, that's where you're going to get into the Bajas. That's where you're going to get into the Mexicali 100. And those were more of an endurance type races.
And then also, just because we're got to talk about it, land speed racing, big open areas where we don't have in the East Coast, where you can just max out the speed and go as fast as possible.
Right. And those were both big types of racing that 4x4s did attempt to do.
Yep.
They factually did. And all of this, I think, was happening at or around a similar time. Of course, the Baja-esque inspired races, those are about endurance. That's about off-road handling, your speed, your
Pace.
land speed, pacing, driver endurance. And the land speed was all about going fast in a very linear fashion.
Yep.
They did do that with 4x4s just because they wanted to see how that would hold up, and so they wanted to max out these vehicles. What I think is important is, for me, in the 70s, is they're popped up all across the country, but densely populated, in kind of that eastern Mississippi realm. But then you even see it through the plains and into the Pacific Northwest, is you get this culture of race Jeeps where individuals took old CJs, CJ2A, CJ5s, military surplus, pickup trucks, and they transferred whatever power plant they could into it. Anything that was just kind of like laying about the farm,
Yep.
And all of a sudden they started matching you up in basically a drag lane or a hill climb. And we're not talking hill climbs like you see on, Insta or TikTok now, where there's, these rock buggies and they're going, big blown V8s and
they gotta
slinky
go
moon suspensions.
Certain line.
Where it's traversing this. It was just like a drag strip that basically went up a hill.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was a slight incline. It's your conversation about, hey, how fast can we climb the highest hill in town?
Yes. And there was some we'll call tough truck competitions back then as well, where you had kind of a maze and you had to navigate the Jeeps as quickly as you could through that. Seen some awesome vintage photos from the 70s of people in 2As and early 5s, no headlights, that kind of stuff, and they're mashing those poor things through the maze.
100%. And we see this with a bunch of valuable clubs start to pop up from coast to coast, where now we have people getting together to race. Different than, say, than your dirt track or your oval track racing. You're getting these Jeep clubs together, and they're starting to go, how can we push our Jeeps? Because we weren't really doing the trail riding, right?
There wasn't really trail networks like there are today.
Correct.
And very much like the cars, but again, it was much earlier, is how the first hot rod happened is you went and you found whatever was common and was cast off and you could get for cheap and then make it fast. And similarly, you have a bunch of farm kids and they're like, oh, I want something to tinker with. I want to beat my buddy. I want to go at the hedgerow. And I'm going to find, grandpa's old Jeep or dad's old Jeep that's no longer useful on the farm. And now I'm going to hot rod it.
Yep.
I'm going to tinker with it.
And I thought it was interesting that while a lot of those vehicles, we talk a lot about the 4x4 market, there was a number of vehicles that they actually just ran an I-beam front end, and it was like a drag race, but it just happens to be on mud or sand. So they had big paddle tires.
Yep.
And it's interesting. There's a number of those races or racers still relevant by today's standards. And so, if you do like this information, there's actually a couple different clubs. There are some people who have a lot of information. There's actually one of the guys who's watching here, a good friend of the business and owns a Jeep business himself. Fred Motice from Anything for a Jeep is actually a dedicated racer from the 80s and 90s who won a bunch of these races with a Dauntless powered Jeep.
And still has his Jeep.
I know. I love it. I lust after his Jeep every time we see it because that's where my teeth were cut in these big truck national shows where we would go to the big traveling fair. They were at the fairgrounds, but the show was a big traveling show, and they'd bring these, by today's standards, mega trucks in. And they would have them on display, and there might be a monster truck out doing a car crush and a number of Jeeps on display. But then you would also have these race Jeeps, kind of staged. And they might be doing, drags or weight pulls of sorts.
Yep.
And so that was really where, what created relevancy to our market at that time. Right now, our community is dedicated with does this look cool? Do I have big tires? Is it functional for camping? Is it color coordinated? Is this a nice extension of me as a person? I think society was just a little bit different at that time. And you needed that functional mindset to be like, well, I want it to look cool, but I also need to rationalize my investment in it. And I need to go fast. I need it to beat somebody else. I'm proud when I do that.
I have to build it out of whatever I find laying around. My stick welder had to put it together.
Yes.
Or my buddy that, can weld at his job, so he has that skill, is now going to help me out. And that kind of stuff happened all across America.
And there were little independent race and 4x4 shops all across America. You could find a specialty business. And oftentimes it was an individual who joined a club in the 60s and 70s who did it to their own Jeep.
Yep.
Honestly, think about Rusty's Off-Road. Rusty literally was a business that he is today. He was born out of the time frame that he was just a little off-road shop, and he had done it to his own vehicles.
Yep.
And the people in his local community wanted it done to theirs. Wanted what he had done to theirs as well. And so he just started, sharing those trades or practices. There's actually very few of those left, but at one time we had Columbiana 4-wheel drive with Tom Kennedy. We had the Morris family with Morris 4x4, OK 4-wheel drive. All of these were once small businesses that were just locally supporting that race and small aftermarket scene.
Yep.
And then eventually became the e-com and physical retailers that, really pushed our industry along and into the JK and JLJT markets that we now know it as. But that vintage race scene was all about the spirit of human competition. How can I repurpose this vehicle? And there was just some of the coolest vehicles out there. I'm actually in a couple vintage race Jeep CJ7 race groups and whatnot. And it's interesting to see. So there's Tri-County, four-wheelers, Gravel-Rama, and then there's actually a racetrack out in the state of Washington who are still actively running these race series. Now, unfortunately, as a voyeur of the automotive industry, they don't even have an iota of the popularity that they once had. You know, they're still relevant. They're still paying out cash prizes. People are still having a good time. There's still little infighting and communication, just like any of your standard race groups, you know, have, because, you know, you mix competition and sport and enthusiasm, you know, emotions bubble to the surface, but it's still relevant to them, and they're still running these events, and they're still nationally known. And so you can go there and you can see some of these very cool Jeeps running today. And they made modifications, especially when fiberglass came out. They made one-piece front ends, tried to lighten it up. You would typically rip out your headlights because you didn't need lights where you were going. And like you mentioned, you would pretty much find whatever broken down hot rod was laying about, and you'd stuff that into your Jeep. I think it was interesting because obviously we talk a lot about the multi-piece rear ends of that time and spinning splines and whatnot. Most Jeep people will not spin a spline, in my opinion, until you throw a big V8 in there and you start bouncing those tires around. You know, now it's a good precautionary piece at this point to avoid that. But those, as we learn these things as we continue to push the vehicles, that led the way for the technological advancements that we now enjoy. You know, and so this spirit of vintage racing, it lasts up through honestly the early 2000s. There was even some local clubs to northeastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, who would still do time courses as part of their club experience, and they would travel to some of the growing off-road parks, and they would have little cones or little areas. And in fact, there's, you know, some individuals now who are getting involved in some type of off-road rock racing because that is growing in popularity. And we'll talk about that, you know, next week. We're also going to hit next week. We're going to talk about what happens in the 90s and 2000s for the street scene. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the muscle car scene and how it impacts the race Jeeps that you know, honestly, are running around the streets as we speak, and I think they're really cool, personally. So you're going to have to tune in for that next week as well.
Additionally, I know we didn't actually have an activity planned for today, and maybe we save it for the end of next week's episode, but we were able to quickly put together, I don't know if you'd seen me playing on the phone, communicating with Davey. We do have a short interview clip of a customer of ours that we did do an interview in the studio with.
Okay. Yeah, and that individual, good listener and you know, customer of ours. His name is Joe Harper. And you say we want to do it today, you think?
If you want to, we have it.
I think we do it today because obviously we have a couple things planned for next week as well. And so this special interest story, the goal with the studio creation, as we had mentioned to people, was that we would be able to bring more of these special interest stories to you, our viewers and listeners, and ultimately get to share more interviews, more stories, not only from industry professionals, but dedicated enthusiasts who, you know, want to share their Jeep experience, not with us, but not just with us, but with you as well. And so I think that would be a great opportunity to share Joe's story. Additionally, you're going to want to tune in the next couple weeks and see if there's actually something behind this sheet or not. Because I got to be honest, I'm pretty excited about it. And I want to share that with you guys. So, Jeffrey, are we all tuned up and we can share Joe's story a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to see. Hopefully the volume's okay. We didn't get a test run on this. Davey literally just put it together for us as we were talking. And so this will be the first that any of us have seen this.
Hot off the press.
When you're traveling across the country, you're using a tow rig. Tell us a little bit about your tow rig.
I don't hear audio.
Hopefully the audience
like.
does.
Yeah. So the way I pull this off is I still work. I'm not retired. I get that question all the time, and I understand. I kind of got all the white hair, and I can do what I do.
Is there
But
audio?
I've always
It
had a
doesn't look
remote
like there's
job
audio.
since 2009. I'm in IT, so pretty flexible. I don't need to physically show up anywhere. And I said, well,
I don't think
working
there's
at home,
audio on the file Davey
No.
sent me.
That's
travel,
a
travel.
buzz.
Let's be
That's
remote,
a
remote.
buzzkill.
and move across
That's all
the
right.
country.
We
go use,
will-
Jeep Jamborees mainly,
Audio good.
and see the U.S.
Your wife said.
And
Oh,
how am I going to
well,
pull
we
that
can't
off?
hear it.
Just
Well,
me, a one-man
doesn't matter if we
band,
can
because the
hear you.
missus can't keep up with the schedule, and the kids are in school and all that. So I said, okay, I'm gonna maybe one of these crawler haulers. I looked into that, open, closed, fancy trailers, big RV. I looked at all the options and the price points. And I said, well, one way it's flexible is I get myself a 1-ton truck and tow, which I've done before in the past with all those other Jeeps and scenarios. That's how I got the Moab back in the day. And but I need somewhere to sleep, so put a little camper on the front of it, and that's why they refer to them as crawler haulers, because it's an open with the living quarters up front.
Yeah.
And there's some nice companies that make some versions of that, but once again, now we're talking price point. So I came up with this situation where I got a 38-foot gooseneck trailer. I put a 17-foot camper pull behind bumper pull camper behind it, or on the front of it, and then I left enough space for the LJ, and it straps on the back. So you'll see me going down the highway, keeping good highway speed. You'll think I'm a hot shot or just moving equipment across the country, but nope, I sleep in the front and the toy rolls off the back.
Nice.
Yeah. So
So what specifically inspired you to hit the road, attend Jeep Jamboree events all across the country?
yeah, so Jeep Jamboree events, or Jeep Jamboree USA. I went to my first Jamboree. I don't remember how I found out about them, but back in 2007
Okay.
was the first time I heard about them. I said, oh, I've never been to the land between the lakes, Kentucky. Let's go check this out. Organized event. People are going to trail guide you. They're familiar
Yeah.
with the area. They're going to give you a little bit of food, and there's going to be other fellow wheelers there to talk to and hang out with. So sounded interesting. So I went and joined that event. Had a good time. Interesting story there was, since I was rocking 44s at the time, and Jeep Jamboree's tire limit was 35. I had to find who of my buddies had the Chevy 8-lug pattern that would fit on my Jeep, but were closer to 35s. And the closest I got was 37s back then. So I write in for special permission, because this is 07. Internet email isn't as hot as it is these days.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, that's fine. We understand your situation. We'll give you the exception. So I roll in there with my 37s and all this lift for 44. So the scrambler's looking a little funny, but I had a great time. I said, all right, I need to do more of that. So fast forward again, the kids are kind of self-sufficient now, and I don't want to be working from home. I like to have the scenery change outside.
Yeah.
And Jeep Jamboree allows for that, because they have 40-something events across the year throughout, all the months, basically March through November almost. And I was like, all right, well, there's a lot of places on this list I've never been. And not only are you going to these pretty cool places, where I think we're all familiar in the Jeep world with the Jeep Badge of Honor system. So, they have 70 or so places to get to. And I said, well, since I'm kind of going to all these various corners of the U.S., I should try to pick up these badges along the way.
Right.
So,
How many do you have?
Badge of Honors, I actually have all of them now.
All of them.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
It took me 5 years, and I actually got the last one about 3 weeks ago, because I did the Rubicon Trail,
Mm-hmm.
and then about 3 days later, I did the Ducey Irschman in the Sierra Mountains, just south of there, east of Fresno. And man, that is a tough trail.
Is it?
It is. It is 30 miles. We crammed it in a day and a half, but most people take 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a challenging trail, a lot of fun, and that was the last badge. So,
Oh, congrats. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Do you have a favorite trail or destination that you visited so far, and what made it stand out, I guess?
oh, that's a tough one, because there's so many good ones. No, I've never had a good answer for that question.
No?
No, because like I said, there's so many good ones, and they're slightly different. They're good for different reasons.
Okay. That's fair.
Especially time of year.
Yeah.
If you can get into a forest area in the fall when the leaves are changing colors, it's got that kind of view.
Yeah.
If you can get out in Oregon and you're looking at the sun dropping into the ocean, the sunset, That's a different kind of view.
That's awesome.
The Sierra Nevadas and the way the rolling rocks of those mountains and the types of trees they have out there, versus your Drummond Island, Michigan. You're looking across the big lake.
Yeah.
These are all really nice things, and they're all a little different, but they're all really cool.
So when we talk about more specifically the Jeep Jamboree USA, I know you and I were talking yesterday, and that you have, or you're about to have 60 of those events under your belt, correct?
Yeah, at the end of this week, I'm going to be going to the Catskills, New York Jamboree in Monticello area, and that'll put me at 60. Yeah.
And how many this year have you done?
So this year, I have planned to do 24 total, and this would be my heaviest year ever. And that was made possible because my youngest child is now into college, so the house is very empty.
Yeah.
So, so I got, let's see, I guess I'm at 17 or 18 of that 24.
Wow. Okay, I think we're back.
We are back, and you know what we tell people? We are really good at Jeeps. I think that's what matters, and the spirit of adapt and overcome.
And honestly, I think Davey did a wonderful job with that video, but we have no idea because for whatever reason, we had no sound on our end. And though I believe that the mics were muted, it showed muted on our end. We had listeners telling us to shh. So I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. You know what? That was an adapt and overcome. That is a piece that we are intending to bring to you all in the future. And so I'll be honest with you. While we are looking to add some industry professionals and personnel to come in, some other kind of just feel good stories that we would like to do interviews. If there are some listeners who have a particularly unique story and you would like to share with us, we may like to hear from you and have you come into the studio and sit down for an interview.
100%.
Those interviews are going to also be available in their extended versions, potentially. But we are going to be, cutting them down to, kind of that 7 to 10 minute special interest piece to share with you.
The full one will go up on Patreon first, and then from there, if it gets released, it may be either a full or another shortened version of that.
Absolutely.
But what is important to note is that live, you may hear all the extra talking that we did and buggered up that interview for you. But if you go to post and listen to it once it releases on the streaming platforms, or once it's released onto YouTube later, formally recorded, we will edit that out and get rid of that so you can clearly hear the interview.
That's the joy of doing things live for you. Now, equally important, hot off the presses, is the official I Help Build the Sign shirt, right?
That's so cool looking.
And I'm blown away. I love it. So there's the front has the tape sign, and the back that literally says I Help Build the Sign, I Speak Jeep podcast. And black shirt, yellow, vinyl on it.
That's like the high vis yellow.
It's like the high vis vinyl to be reminiscent of the yellow tape that we put on the wall back here to, kind of remind us of our humble beginnings, but also, the continued investment in you, our listener, and our customer base, because the goal is just to kind of keep building with your support. And if you weren't out there listening to us and encouraging and suggesting topics and asking questions, while Jeffrey and I can sit and talk to each other all day long and would be more than happy to do that, it would not be worth it. It would not be worthwhile by any stretch. So
right. You
too can still buy this shirt. They're up for order. We just need you to message our page. We will send you a payable link via email. We'll ship this to you. It is $50 for the shirt plus shipping and handling. There's actually no handling charge, just shipping. And we'll get you that shirt. We also might have one or two at the Bantam Trail Fest in the future. We might have them there. So.
And I'm going to do out a personal mad scientist call out. We want to see pictures of you in this shirt in the most coolest spots.
Absolutely.
We already had cool customers wear our merch and take pictures when they're on the Jeep Trail, when they're out to these awesome places. Sometimes we can't get there. So we want to see this shirt in the coolest spot, and maybe we could do something for you.
Do something for you in the process.
Yes, but you gotta send that to
Jeffrey
Jeffrey.
at JEFFC at SFJ4x4.com. And you post that picture up, we might end up sharing it on our social or using it in some other positive capacity. But just the coolest shirt. I'll show the camera again for our listeners at home. The tape sign, and it says, I helped build the sign, which, realistically, you helped contribute to not only build the physical studio of the podcast, but you build the listener base, you build the dedicated people and following that is this Jeep family, and we appreciate you all so much. We have a lot of Jeeps to build. Again, thanks to you all. Check out Jeffrey's live Tuesday updates to see what's going on in the shop. And we'll keep you posted on all of the other good SFJ 4x4 goodies in the process. Next week, more race Jeeps as we move into the modern era. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.